Ambassador had studied humans for 3 years before this moment. He had watched their videos, read their history, learned their strange customs. He knew they were soft creatures with no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. He knew they lived short lives on a planet that tried to kill them every day. He knew they were new to the galaxy, barely 100 years into space travel. He thought he was ready to meet them. He was wrong. The human vessel Steadfast floated in the meeting zone between space and the outer colonies. It was a simple ship, not beautiful like designs, not elegant like the vessels of the elder races. It was blocky and practical, built for function rather than form. Found it somewhat ugly, but he kept this opinion to himself. His shuttle docked with a soft thump. The airlock cycled and stepped through into the human ship. The air was thicker here, heavier with oxygen. The gravity was stronger than he preferred. The lights were bright, almost harsh. Everything felt slightly wrong, like wearing clothes that did not quite fit. A human waited for him on the other side. She was small, stood nearly 2 meters tall on his 4 legs, and this human barely reached his chest. Her frame was slight, her limbs thin, her body covered in a simple uniform of dark blue. Her hair was black and pulled back from her face. Her skin was pale, her features soft. By every measure new, she should have seemed harmless. But then she looked at him. "Ambassador," she said. Her voice was calm and professional. "I am Lieutenant. Welcome aboard the Steadfast. I will escort you to the diplomatic chamber." Opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. Something was happening. Something was wrong. He felt a sensation he had not felt in decades, not since he was young and small on his, not since he had hidden in the tall grass while larger creatures hunted nearby. The human was watching him. Not just looking, not just seeing, watching. Her eyes, dark and round and utterly focused, had locked onto him the moment he stepped through the airlock. They tracked every movement he made. When he shifted his weight from his front legs to his back legs, her eyes noticed. When his sensory tendrils twitched, her eyes followed. When he blinked his secondary eyelids, her gaze flickered to his face for just a moment before returning to its patrol of his entire body. She was measuring him, calculating him, taking him apart piece by piece with nothing but her vision. Realized he had stopped moving. He stood frozen in the airlock, unable to take another step forward. His heart beat faster. His breathing grew shallow. Every instinct in his ancient brain screamed the same message over and over: predator, predator, predator. The human smiled. Her lips pulled back to reveal her teeth, flat and white and somehow more terrifying than any fangs had ever seen. His translator told him this was a friendly gesture. His body did not believe it. "Is everything all right, Ambassador?" she asked. Her head tilted slightly to one side and her eyes never stopped watching. "Do you need a moment to adjust to our atmosphere?" Forced himself to breathe. He was being foolish. This was a small human female, barely armed, alone in a corridor. He was a senior ambassador of the collective, representative of a civilization that had sailed the stars for 10,000 years. He had nothing to fear from this creature. And yet, "I am fine," he managed to say. "The air is different. Please lead the way." Nodded and turned to walk down the corridor. Followed, and he noticed immediately that even with her back to him, she was still watching. Her head would turn slightly, just enough to keep him in her peripheral vision. Her steps were measured and even, but her body was ready, always ready, like a spring held under tension. They passed other humans in the corridor. Some wore the same dark uniforms as, others wore different colors, different styles. All of them looked at as he passed, not with curiosity, not with fear, not with hostility. They looked at him the way a creature looks at something it is evaluating, something it is deciding about. Threat or not threat, prey or not prey, kill or not kill. The thoughts came to unbidden and he tried to push them away. He was imagining things. He was letting the strange environment affect his judgment. Humans were not predators. They were soft and weak and short-lived. They posed no danger to him. But his body knew the truth his mind refused to accept. They reached the diplomatic chamber, a large room with a circular table and chairs designed for multiple species. Saw seats built for his four-legged frame, seats for the two-legged humans, even seats for species he did not recognize. The humans had prepared well. "Please make yourself comfortable," said, gesturing to the seats. "Captain will join you shortly. Can I bring you any refreshments?" Lowered himself into the seat, his legs folding beneath him. "Water would be acceptable," he said. "Thank you." Nodded and walked to a small station at the side of the room. Watched her move, and he noticed things he had not noticed before. The way her feet made almost no sound on the floor. The way her hands stayed loose and ready at her sides. The way her eyes swept the room every few seconds, checking every corner, every shadow, every possible hiding place. She was not just a guide. She was not just a junior officer. She was a hunter in human form, and this ship was her territory. Accepted the water she brought him, and he noticed that even as she handed him the glass, her eyes met his. They held his gaze for just a moment, and in that moment saw something ancient and patient and utterly certain. She knew what she was, and now she knew that he knew too. "The captain will be with you soon," she said again, and she took her position by the door and she watched. She would watch for the entire meeting. She would watch when spoke and when he listened and when he ate and when he stood and when he sat. She would watch every movement he made, and she would remember every single one. Had studied humans for 3 years. He realized now that he had learned nothing at all. 5 days passed aboard the Steadfast and began to keep notes. At first he told himself it was for his official report. The collective would want to know everything about humans, every detail of their behavior, every aspect of their culture. But as the days went on, admitted the truth to himself. He was not taking notes for the collective. He was taking notes because he was afraid, and writing things down made the fear feel smaller. It did not work. Day 1, the meeting with Captain. The captain was a tall human, older than, with gray in his dark hair and lines around his eyes. He spoke calmly and politely about trade agreements and diplomatic relations. His words were friendly. His manner was warm, and his eyes never stopped moving. Watched the captain while the captain talked. Every few seconds, his gaze would sweep the room. It would pause on movement, any movement at all. When an aide reached for her, his eyes snapped to her instantly, held for half a heartbeat, then continued their patrol. When a human officer shifted in his chair, the same thing happened. Saw everything. He missed nothing. And he did all of this while discussing grain imports. Day 2, lunch in the common area. Had requested to eat with the crew, hopping to learn more about human social behavior. He sat at a table with 3 human officers, eating the strange food they had prepared for him, listening to their conversation about repairs to the engine systems. A small flying creature drifted through the room. Later learned it was called a moth, an insect from Earth that had somehow found its way into the ship's garden section. It flew in lazy circles near the ceiling, barely visible, making no sound. Every human in the room tracked it. They did not look at it directly. They did not stop their conversations or their meals, but saw their eyes flicker just slightly, following the moth's path across the room. They knew exactly where it was. They knew exactly where it was going. They tracked it without effort, without thought, without even realizing they were doing it. Ensign sat at the next table playing a game on a small device. She was young, barely past childhood by human standards, with round cheeks and a quick smile. She seemed harmless. She seemed innocent. She seemed like no threat at all. The moth flew past her. Without looking up, without pausing her game, without any visible sign that she had noticed, his hand shot out and caught the moth between 2 fingers. She held it for a moment, examined it briefly, then opened her fingers and let it fly away. She never stopped playing her game. She never fully looked at the moth. She simply knew where it was and grabbed it from the air like it was the easiest thing in the world. Wrote in his notes that evening, "Their peripheral vision is not peripheral, it is comprehensive. They see everything all the time even when they appear focused on something else. They do not merely observe, they survey, they assess, they target." Day 3, training with the security team, had asked to observe, claiming cultural interest. The truth was that he needed to understand. He needed to know what he was dealing with. The humans trained in a large room filled with obstacles and targets. They ran through courses, climbed walls, crawled through tunnels, all while being shot at with practice weapons that left small paint marks on impact. Watched them move, and his notes grew longer and more troubled. They communicated without speaking. A glance, a tilt of the head, a raised eyebrow. These tiny movements carried complete messages. One human would look at another, and the second human would immediately know where to go, what to do, how to move. They flowed around obstacles like water, always aware of each other, never colliding, never hesitating. Officer, a broad-shouldered human with a stern face, led one of the training teams. He moved through the course with frightening efficiency, his body low and fast, his eyes scanning constantly. At one point, a practice drone appeared behind him, coming from a blind spot. Did not see it. He could not have seen it. But somehow he knew it was there. He spun and fired in a single motion, hitting the drone perfectly before it could mark him. Later, asked him how he had known. Shrugged. "I heard it," he said. "Felt the air move. Saw's eyes shift when she noticed it. You learn to pay attention to everything." Everything. They paid attention to everything. Every sound, every movement of air, every flicker of another person's gaze. They built a complete picture of their environment using every sense they had, and they did it constantly, automatically, without conscious effort. Day 4 stopped sleeping well. He lay in his quarters at night and he could feel them out there, moving through the corridors, watching the shadows, tracking every sound. The ship that had seemed merely ugly when he arrived now felt like something else entirely. It felt like a den, a lair, a place where predators rested between hunts. He was not a guest here, he realized. He was being tolerated. The humans had decided he was not a threat, and so they allowed him to walk among them, to eat their food, to sleep in their territory. But if that calculation ever changed, if they ever looked at him and saw something other than a harmless ambassador. Did not finish that thought. Day 5, he sat in the observation deck looking out at the stars. Found him there as she always seemed to find him. She appeared at his side like a ghost, making almost no sound, her dark eyes reflecting the starlight. "You have been watching us," she said. It was not a question. Felt a chill run through his body. "I am an ambassador. Observation is part of my duty." Nodded slowly. "And what have you observed?" A dozen lies came to his mind, 100 diplomatic non-answers. But when he looked into his eyes, he knew that lying would be pointless. She would see through it instantly. She would read the truth in his body language, in his breathing, in the tiny movements of his sensory tendrils. "I have observed," he said carefully, "that humans are not what they appear to be." Smiled, and this time did not need his translator to understand the expression. It was the smile of a hunter who had been recognized at last. "No," she agreed, "we are not." She turned and walked away, leaving alone with the stars and his growing fear. He began writing his preliminary report that night. The collective needed to know. The attack came on the 17th day. Was eating his morning meal in the common area when the alarms began. They were loud and harsh, filling the ship with a sound that made his bones shake. Red lights flashed along the walls. The calm voice of the ship's computer announced words that did not immediately understand. Hull breach in sections 7 and 12. Unauthorized boarding in progress. All hands to battle stations. For a moment, everything was chaos. Dropped his food container and looked around wildly, trying to understand what was happening. He saw crew members rushing past him, heard shouting in the corridors, felt the ship shudder as something hit the outer hull. Then he looked at the humans. They had stopped moving. No, that was not quite right. They had stopped rushing. The panic that expected to see was not there. Instead, every human in the room stood perfectly still for exactly one heartbeat. In that heartbeat, something changed in their faces. Their expressions did not shift dramatically. Their bodies did not tense visibly. But something behind their eyes went flat and cold like a door closing. Then they began to move, and understood true terror. Quartermaster reached beneath the table where he had been eating and pulled out a weapon. It had been hidden there, attached to the underside, completely invisible. Had eaten at that table 3 times. He had never known the weapon was there. Chief Technician produced a weapon from a panel in the wall that had walked past 100 times. A young officer named pulled 2 small guns from her boots. Another man retrieved a blade from behind a decorative plant. Within 3 seconds, every human in the room was armed. They did not speak. They did not need to. Looked at and nodded once, and 2 crew members immediately moved to cover the side entrance. Raised an eyebrow at, and then 3 others took positions behind the serving counter. A complex dance of glances and gestures passed through the room, and when it was done, 18 humans stood in perfect formation, covering every door, every window, every possible point of entry. Pressed himself against the wall, trying to make himself small. His hearts pounded. His breath came fast and shallow. He was a diplomat, not a warrior. He had never seen combat. He did not belong here. The humans ignored him completely. They had already assessed him. They knew he was not a threat. They knew he was not useful. They would protect him if they could, but they would not waste attention on him. Their eyes were fixed on the doors. The ship shook again. Heard the sound of weapons fire in the distance, growing closer. He heard screaming, though he could not tell if it was human or something else. He smelled smoke and ozone and something that might have been blood. The door to the common area exploded inward. Had heard of the... They were a species of raiders and pirates, reptilian creatures with armored scales and sharp claws and a reputation for extreme violence. They attacked weak ships and killed everyone aboard. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they did not. 4 warriors came through the broken door. They were huge, nearly 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor, carrying weapons that looked like they could punch through starship hulls. Their eyes swept the room and saw hunger in them. Hunger and confidence. They expected to find prey here. They expected easy kills. They found humans instead. The first died before it finished stepping through the door. A shot took it in the throat, the one spot where its armor was thin. The creature made a wet choking sound and fell. The second raised its weapon but was already moving. She had been in motion before the first fell, already targeting the second, already calculating angles and distances. Her shot hit in its left eye. It stumbled backward into the third, and before either could recover, and 2 others opened fire. The fourth was smarter than its companions. It dove to the side, using the bodies of its dead comrades as cover. It fired blindly into the room, and saw one of its shots pass close enough to scorch the wall above his head. But the humans were not where they expected them to be. They had moved the instant the dove. They flowed around the room like shadows, never where they should be, always where there was not looking. Appeared at the creature's left side, appeared at its right. The young officer came up behind it. They fired together. The fell. 11 seconds. From the moment the door exploded to the moment the last enemy died, 11 seconds had passed. 4 warriors, each one larger and stronger and more heavily armored than any human, killed in 11 seconds. Stared at the bodies. He stared at the humans standing over them. He tried to make sense of what he had just witnessed. Lowered his weapon and looked at, more coming. At least 2 more squads, replied. She was not even breathing hard. They breached at multiple points. The captain is leading the response in Section 7. Then we hold here and protect the civilians." Eyes swept the room and found. For a moment they met his gaze. "Ambassador, stay against that wall. Do not move until we tell you it is safe." Nodded. He could not speak. He could not think. He could only watch as the humans reloaded their weapons and returned to their positions and waited for the next wave with the same flat, patient calm they had shown before. They were not frightened. They were not excited. They were not even fully engaged, realized with horror. This was routine for them. This was normal. This was what they were built to do. More came, more died. Throughout the ship, the same scene played out again and again. Warriors, confident in their strength and their armor and their numbers, encountered humans who tracked them through walls and around corners and in the dark. Humans who communicated without speaking. Humans who moved like ghosts and struck like lightning and showed no mercy at all. When it was over, 37 lay dead throughout the steadfast. The humans had lost no one. A few injuries, a few close calls, but not a single death. Sat against the wall for a long time after the fighting ended. He sat and he stared at the bodies, and he thought about what he had seen. The humans had not fought like prey defending themselves. They had fought like what they truly were. Predators interrupted during a meal. And they had made the pay for the interruption. 3 days after the attack, requested a private meeting with the ship's medical officer. He needed answers. He needed to understand. The questions burned inside him like fire, and he could not rest until they were answered. Doctor met him in her office, a small room filled with strange instruments and charts of the human body. She was an older woman with silver streaks in her black hair and calm, steady hands. She smiled when entered, and unlike the smiles of the warriors, hers seemed genuinely warm. "Ambassador," she said, "please sit, I have been expecting you." Lowered himself into the chair designed for his species. "You knew I would come." "Of course." Doctor poured hot water over dried leaves, making the drink humans called tea. "You watched the battle, you saw what we can do, now you have questions. Everyone has questions after they see us fight." She handed him a cup of the tea, took it but did not drink. His minds were too busy forming the words he needed to say. "I have studied your species for years," he began. "I read your history, I watched your videos. I learned about your wars and your art and your science. I thought I understood you. And now I understand nothing." Set the cup down. His hands were shaking. What are humans really?" Doctor sipped her tea slowly. She seemed in no hurry to answer. Outside the window, stars drifted past, cold and distant and eternal. "We evolved on a planet called Earth," she said finally. "It is a small world, not particularly remarkable by galactic standards, but it is a death world. Everything on Earth is trying to kill everything else all the time. The plants are poisonous. The animals are deadly. The weather is extreme. Even the bacteria and viruses are constantly evolving new ways to destroy us. Many species evolve on dangerous worlds," said. "This does not explain what I saw." "No, what you saw comes from something else." Doctor set down her cup and folded her hands. "We evolved as persistence hunters." Did not recognize the term, persistence hunters. On Earth, millions of years ago, our ancestors were not the fastest animals. We were not the strongest. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. By every measure, we should have gone extinct. But we had two things that other creatures did not have. We had eyes that could track movement across great distances, and we had bodies that could keep moving long after other animals had to stop. She stood and walked to a chart on the wall, pointing to the image of a human body. Other predators on Earth would chase their prey in short bursts. They would run fast, catch the prey quickly, or give up. But we did something different. We would choose an animal. We would start following it, and we would never stop. Felt a chill run through him. Never stop. The prey would run. We would follow. The prey would hide. We would find it. The prey would run again. We would follow again. We would chase that animal for hours, for days. We would track its footprints, smell its scent, follow the broken branches and disturbed ground it left behind. And eventually the prey would be too tired to run anymore. It would collapse from exhaustion, and then we would kill it. Doctor turned to face. Her eyes, he noticed, had not stopped watching him even while she looked at the chart. We did not hunt by being faster or stronger. We hunted by being patient, by being persistent, by never, ever giving up. And our eyes evolved to support this. We developed vision that could track a target across long distances, that could detect the smallest movement, that could pick out details other creatures would miss. The way your crew tracked the, said slowly. The way they knew where every enemy was, even in chaos. Yes, it is instinct now. We are born with it. Even our children, before they learn to walk, will track moving objects with their eyes. We cannot turn it off. Every room we enter, we automatically identify threats and exits and potential weapons. Every person we meet, we assess their physical capabilities, their body language, their likely behavior. We do not choose to do this. We simply do it constantly, forever. Thought about's eyes on him in the corridor. He thought about Captain's gaze sweeping the meeting room. He thought about every human he had seen since boarding the Steadfast, all of them watching, always watching. You are never at rest, he said. Your minds are always hunting. Doctor smiled and this time saw the predator behind the warm expression. We are predators wearing the faces of friendly creatures. We evolved to look harmless because it made hunting easier. Our soft faces and round eyes make other species trust us. They see no threat. They relax around us. And then, if we need to, we strike. That is, search for the right word, terrifying. Yes, many species find it so. Doctor returned to her seat. But we are not mindless killers. We choose when to hunt and when to rest. We choose our prey carefully. The humans on this ship have decided that you are not prey, ambassador. You are a guest. We will protect you as we would protect one of our own. And if you had decided otherwise? Doctor did not answer. She did not need to. The silence said everything. Stood to leave, but he paused at the door. One more question burned in his mind. The who attacked us, he said. They were warriors, killers. They had conquered dozens of worlds, and your crew destroyed them like they were nothing. How is that possible? Doctor picked up her tea again. They were predators, she agreed. But they evolved on a world where they were the top of the food chain. They never learned what it meant to face something more dangerous than themselves. They never learned to fear. She looked at over the rim of her cup, and her eyes were old and patient and utterly certain. Humans evolved on a world where everything was dangerous. We learned to fear early. We learned to watch constantly. We learned to track every threat and remember every danger. And then we learned something else, something the never understood. What? Doctor smiled. We learned that the most frightening thing in any room is us. Left the medical office and walked slowly back to his quarters. He did not sleep that night. He lay in the darkness and thought about persistence hunters. He thought about eyes that never stopped watching. He thought about creatures that looked harmless but carried the instincts of ancient killers in their blood. And he began to write his final report. The collective needed to know. They needed to understand before it was too late. Ambassador returned home 1 month after his mission began. His shuttle docked on a gray morning, and he walked down the ramp with slow, heavy steps. He was tired. He had not slept properly since the night he spoke with Doctor. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw human faces watching him from the darkness. The Council of Elders was waiting for him in the great hall. 12 sat in a half-circle, their 4 legs folded beneath them, their sensory tendrils waving gently in the warm air. They had been leading the collective for centuries. They had seen empires rise and fall. They believed they understood the galaxy. Was about to change their minds. Ambassador, said Elder, the oldest of the council, we have received your preliminary reports. They are unusual. We require clarification. Of course. Took his place at the speaking platform. He had prepared for this moment for weeks. He had written and rewritten his final report 100 times. Now, standing before the council, he felt the weight of every word he was about to say. "I spent 30 days aboard a human vessel," he began. "I observed their crew. I ate their food. I attended their meetings. I witnessed their combat against raiders. And I have reached a conclusion that I believe is vital to the future of our species." Elder leaned forward. "Speak." Took a deep breath. "We have been wrong about humans, completely and dangerously wrong. Our initial assessments described them as a young species, physically weak, technologically adequate, and not worthy of significant attention. These assessments must be revised immediately." He activated a display showing images from his time aboard the Steadfast, pictures of Captain, and the others. They looked harmless in the still images, friendly, approachable. "Humans are not weak," said. "Their bodies are merely adequate, their technology is merely impressive, but their minds, their instincts, these are weapons beyond anything we have encountered." He showed the council footage from the attack. They watched in silence as 18 humans killed 37 armored warriors in less than a quarter of a standard hour. They saw the flat, patient expressions on human faces. They saw the impossible coordination, the wordless communication, the absolute lack of fear. "They are persistence predators," explained. "This is what they call themselves. On there they hunted by following their prey for days without stopping. They evolved eyes that could track a target across vast distances. They evolved minds that could remember every movement, predict every escape, calculate every possibility. They did not win through strength or speed. They won by never giving up, never stopping, never looking away." Elder, the youngest of the council, spoke up. "This seems difficult to believe. They look so soft." "Yes," agreed. "They look harmless. This is by design. Their soft faces and round eyes make other species trust them. Their friendly expressions encourage us to lower our guard. But behind those eyes, behind those smiles, there are minds that are constantly watching, constantly hunting, constantly calculating." He displayed his written notes on the screen. "When a human enters a room, they automatically identify every exit, every threat, every potential weapon. When they meet a new person, they assess physical capabilities and predict behavior within seconds. They do not choose to do this. They cannot stop themselves from doing this. It is instinct, written into their very blood." The council was silent, could see uncertainty in their expressions, perhaps the first signs of the fear that had become his constant companion. "I have a final recommendation," said. "It is the most important thing I will ever say to this council." "Speak," Elder said again. Looked at each elder in turn, meeting their eyes, trying to convey the importance of his words. "Do not make enemies of the humans. Do not threaten what they protect. Do not run from them because they will follow. Do not hide from them because they will find you. If you enter a room with a human, know that you have already been assessed and they know your threat level. They know your weaknesses. They know exactly how to end you if necessary." He paused, letting the words sink in. "They are watching, they are always watching, and they never ever stop." Elder was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, "What do you recommend?" "Alliance," said without hesitation. "Immediate and unconditional alliance. We must make ourselves their friends before anyone else does. We must show them that we are not threats, that we are not prey, that we are valuable partners worth protecting." "You want us to submit to this young species?" Elder asked, his voice sharp with disbelief. "No, I want us to survive." Stepped forward, his 4 legs trembling with exhaustion and fear and absolute certainty. "I have walked among them. I have been watched by them. I have seen what they can do. If we become their enemies, they will hunt us with the same patience and persistence that made them masters of their death world. They will track us across the galaxy. They will follow us for generations. They will never stop until we are destroyed." He turned off the display and faced the council with empty hands. But if we become their allies, we will have the most terrifying protectors in the known galaxy. Every enemy who looks at us will see humans standing beside us, and they will turn away. Because every species in the galaxy is learning what I learned aboard the Steadfast. The most frightening thing in any room is a human, and the safest place to stand is behind them. The council deliberated for 3 days. In the end, they voted unanimously to accept's recommendation. The collective sent diplomats to Earth. They signed treaties of friendship and mutual protection. They became humanity's first formal ally in the galactic community. Years later, when other species asked why they had so quickly bound themselves to such a young and unknown species, ambassadors gave a simple answer. We met them, they would say. We saw their eyes, we felt them watching us, and we understood. Understood what? The questioners would ask. And they would look at the humans standing nearby. Those soft, harmless-looking creatures with their round eyes and friendly smiles, and they would shiver despite the warmth. We understood that we would rather be watched by the humans than hunted by them. Lived for many more years. He became the leading expert on human behavior in the collective. He wrote books and gave lectures and trained a new generation of diplomats. But he never forgot those first moments aboard the Steadfast, when a small human female looked at him, and he felt the ancient fear of prey in the presence of a predator. Sometimes in his dreams, he still saw eyes. Watching, always watching. He would wake in the darkness, his heart's pounding, and he would remind himself that the humans were allies now. Friends, protectors. But even so, he kept his lights on at night. Just in case someone was watching.